Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being on this series of this program, The Future of Today. I'm Armando F. Sanchez. We are going live and we are on the internet, and I want to thank three wonderful individuals who have put up with a lot of little struggles here to put the show together. I'm in my La Jolla office here today, so there's been sort of the studio is new to us, but we've managed to connect it. Uh, Andre is in Lisbon. He is in the afternoon, evening hours. He's ready to thinking about sleeping. While most of us are here in the United States. Jeannie is here in California. She's a PhD student, and Josh is in Wisconsin, and they're waiting for spring. As last I heard that they're waiting for the groundhog to come out and let them know if it's going to be a great summer or not. But with that, I'd like to ask each of them to introduce themselves, take a couple of minutes, and today's topic is about acknowledging the need or the lack of need for basic income. And with that, I'll pass it over, and we'll start with Andre. Andre, please, a couple of minutes, introduce yourself and tell us how you're involved with this topic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andre Coelho. I'm an engineer as a study field. I got interested in basic income just a couple of years ago, and have started writing to Basic Income News about last year. The concept is really appealing to me because inequality is ramping in our society, and so this is a logical and wholehearted idea. I think should go forward. Otherwise, we'll have tremendous social problems.
Wonderful. And you'll eventually educate us what this whole principle is of basic income as well. Next, we have Jeannie Van Drenen. I hope I didn't mispronounce it. She's a PhD candidate right now in the health profession, and she's here in California. So, Jeannie, thank you for being on the show. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having us. So I am originally from Canada, and I am an executive member of the board of directors of the Basic Income Canada Network, and that's our regional network in Canada that advocates for universal basic income. And I've also been writing for BI News along with Andre and Josh for about 5 years now. I came across basic income in my master's program 5 years ago, and I was seeing some really systemic problems, health problems, education problems, things that couldn't be solved by standard solutions, and I came across the basic income experiments that had been done in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in the US and Canada, and it really made a lot of sense to me, and I thought, well, why aren't we considering more systemic solutions to the kind of entrenchable problems that our society is facing? So I reached out, and I found out that there was this whole network of people who are already doing great work on it, so I joined on board.
Awesome. We lost a little bit of your broadcast there, but we'll come back to that issue, but thank you very much. And last but not least, we have Josh over there in beautiful Wisconsin. Thank you for being on the show, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm Josh Martin. I went to St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota, and in my junior year I actually studied abroad at the London School of Economics, which is where I first heard of this idea. I was in a class on social policy. My professor, in his lecture on Social Security, just kind of mentioned this as an offhand policy that's gaining some momentum. He mentioned the pilots in Namibia and India, and I had just been to Namibia the previous summer, and so I was intrigued and looked into it. And the outcomes from that pilot were so astounding to me that I wanted to just continue to research this idea. And so I went back to St. Olaf. I created an independent study class on it in my undergrad, and that's actually when I reached out to Carl Widerquist, just out of the blue, asking him for some advice and to answer some questions. And he's who got me into the Basic Income News Network. So now I've been a volunteer editor for them for 2 or 3 years now. Really enjoy it. I gave a TED-style talk on this at St. Olaf. And I also last year did my master's at LSE again, where I wrote my dissertation on universal basic income possibly supplanting universal credit in the UK.
Okay, well, you're talking about a subject matter that is true to my heart. I'm an economist in background, so I had heard about basic income and universal income. It's sort of, the words are sort of back and forth. But sort of in a nutshell, and again, ladies first. Let's go, Jeannie first. What is a basic income? What is this universal concept? And you sort of touched on the idea, what if we don't have it? So sort of go from there, and then we'll make it a group discussion. Jeannie?
So the principle of basic income is that it's a universal amount that's given to everyone regardless of their employment status. And the easiest way to describe it is in principle, because a lot of the models are actually very different. So some people advocate for something called a universal demigrant, which is universal and given to everyone regardless of other income sources that they have coming in. And then there's other models that are more like a negative income tax, which would be adjusted based on other amounts of income that you have coming in. But the principles cross-cutting the models are the same, and that is that you are assured of this amount of money regardless of your participation in the labor market and regardless of things like race and education and some of the other things that determine how much income people in our society get right now.
Okay.
Or that,
Josh?
and then Liz can add.
Go ahead. Josh?
Yeah, I mean, to continue on this topic of kind of explaining what basic income is, it really establishes an income floor for everyone. So you're ensuring that everyone's necessities are met. You're ensuring that no one goes below a certain standard of living. And I think that's a really attractive option. And the first reason why I became so interested in this is because it gets rid of the poverty traps that we currently see with our welfare state at the moment. Because right now, if someone is in poverty and they're receiving some kind of social assistance, if they work more, if they earn more income, then what happens is that their benefit gets pulled and they'll get a little bit less. And so there's a very tangible work disincentive with our current welfare state program, but that doesn't exist under a basic income because all of a sudden you're guaranteed the same amount every single month. You're able to work as much as you want to be able to, increase your economic activity and to be able to earn more income. And that was really the first reason why I really thought that this idea had legs. And then on top of that, I'd also add the different kind of political arguments for it are one of my favorite aspects of this area, because you can really make arguments for this from the right, from the left, from any kind of political ideology.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Josh. Andre? Same question.
Well, actually, Josh was saying something about the social security systems, and I remembered then in Portugal, as in many other parts of the world, the welfare state and the social security systems are highly conditional. They entrap people in situations that are not sustainable. They get destigmatized. They get to fill in these forms that never end and are so complicated. And many people just don't get the benefits they should get because they cannot finish the forms. Or transportation. Some people are so poor they cannot go to these places and fill in the forms. No, but this is real. Okay, and even in Portugal, which is apparently part of the developed world, which is something I don't believe in. But anyway, the social security systems are part of the problem, although the principle they were founded on, I think, is a good one, which is to provide for those who have nothing or next to nothing. But the way they are mounted right now is actually a barrier for other progressive policies like basic income.
And I think one thing that you touch on, Andre, is that there's a lot of holes in our current social safety net in all of the countries. I'm most familiar with Canada's, but there are so many ways that you can fall through the cracks and so many conditions that you have to meet. And for people who, are outside of one definition of homelessness but are not quite in one definition of employment, they're left with things that don't meet their needs. And what Josh was talking about, having the security of something that you can count on and something that you're assured, regardless of which definition you fall in one month or another, helps people to be able to plan their lives and empowers them to make decisions that are best for them.
Okay, here's a
Yeah.
question for all three of you, and then it's open for conversation. Why, I mean, this idea is not new. It wasn't created yesterday. The three of you have studied it. Why now? Why is this idea of universal or basic income so critical now and into the future? It's open.
I'll take a first stab at this. I mean, I think that it's a very interesting time in the world today because we're seeing a lot of technological innovation, and I think we're getting to kind of a waterfall point where we might see a lot of jobs being automated in the next 20 to 30 years. There was a study out of Oxford in 2013 by Frey and Osborne that really highlighted this, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think it was around 50% of jobs could be automated by, I think, 2 decades or so. And the White House economic report that came out in February took that further and said that I think it was 83% of all jobs that earn $20 or less per hour are likely to be automated. Now, those are scary numbers, and we just need to be ready for a possible future where people won't have jobs available in the same way that we have them today, or even 10 years ago. I mean, going back to what our current welfare state does, like Andre was saying, they're very conditional. They're saying you need to be looking for work, that your full-time job is looking for a job. But what happens when those jobs just aren't there anymore? And that's where I think basic income needs to come in to make sure that we're all sharing in the fruits of this automation. We're all making sure that even though we don't own the means of production as much as some other wealthy billionaire might, we need to make sure that everyone has their necessities.
And the inequality are ramping. The society is falling apart. We are sitting in our relatively clean, organized rooms, but most worlds doesn't happen like this. We are the fortunate. I mean, and I don't leave Portugal that often, but I know a bit, and we are. Most people cannot access basic things. This is not only about automation; it's about having our principles of justice and solidarity in place, because they are not in place. Our constitutions say, oh, every human being should have the right to a house, to a proper feeding, to social security, to health and education. But it's not happening. Why not? If it's not, then we should do something about it. Maybe I'm being too basic, but this is from my engineering background. We have a problem. Let's think of hypothesis to solve this. And basic income is a risky assessment. It requires trust. It requires risk. But we cannot control everything. Let's give up on that idea. It's been too long that we want to control everything and see what people are doing. Are you getting a job? Are you participating? Are you doing this or that? Let's trust people that they can use this money to better their lives and be happy.
Yeah, and I think to Josh's earlier point, we are seeing increased automation and in human development where we don't need everyone in our society to work.
Jeannie's connection dropped, so she's back on. Jeannie, are you out there? Jenna?
I can't hear her.
Yeah, I think she dropped out of the line. Her internet connection might be slow. Okay. We'll wait for her to come on board. We'll wait for her to rejoin us on that. But let me ask a question that I think we're all dancing around in that keeps coming into our mind. Let's hypothetically say we ignore the whole idea of universal income. Okay, we just say, okay, it doesn't exist, don't worry about it, let's ignore it, and let's move on. What would happen if we did that? Today, given technology, given where we are in the population on the country, on the planet, what would happen if we did not begin to think about something of this caliber to put in place?
Josh?
Yeah, Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And obviously it's hard to separate ourselves out from this because we spend so much time thinking about this idea and why we think it might be a good idea for the future. But I guess a world that doesn't have basic income, I mean, like Andre has been pointing out, we're seeing a lot of increased inequality around the world right now. We're seeing, a lot of the means of production being owned by just a few people in the, 1% of the 1%. And this all kind of comes down to that old saying, like, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, he can for his life. What happens when you make a robot to fish for him? Does he still get to eat all the time, or does he now starve because someone else owns that robot and isn't willing to share the wealth?
Hmm. Yes, we have Jenna back, so we want to
Hi,
thank.
everyone. Sorry
Yeah,
about
that's
that. I
it.
could
No,
hear
it's
you.
okay.
You couldn't hear me. Strange. Yeah, and I think the other reason why right now is a critical time for basic income is because we're realizing that many of our social problems are very complex and they're not solvable by the traditional ways that we've been doing them. So, Andre's describing this inequality that we're facing and some really entrenched social problems that we're not able to solve. And I think people are increasingly searching for solutions that are actually going to work and that are going to be more comprehensive and more sustainable. I think sustainability is a big part of it. Our environment is changing, and we're looking for new ways to solve problems that we're really not very good at tackling.
Okay, Andre?
Yeah, the other day I remember that well we have other challenges like climate change, for instance, and I thought, who is going to solve the climate change problem? Is it the rich? Is it the middle class? Is it the poor? Is it everybody? And then I thought, well, there is probably a relation with basic income. And if you think about it, there's no way the ones that are provided for, or the rich, can solve the climate change problem. Because even if they get all the solar panels and all the electric cars and all the green technologies, the poor, which is the majority, will continue to opt for these polluting devices that are cheaper. So, if anything else, basic income is a necessity because people need to afford everything that all the technologies that can pollute less, that are more environmental sustainable. That in the end is what keeps us alive. Okay, basic income is just a need, is just an end, is just a means to an end. It's not an end in itself, I think.
Jenna, you wanted to share?
Yeah, there's a big portion of the basic income movement that is very intertwined with climate change, and people talk about a carbon dividend as one type of basic income or something that looks like a basic income. I think, Andre, when you're talking about the rich being the ones to solve climate change, I agree that that's probably not going to happen, but I also think we need to reframe who is rich and who is exploiting the environment, because really we have corporations that are exploiting most of our resources, and on an individual level each of us is contributing to that, but really the rich and the poor environmentally I think are corporations and individuals. And if so, there's a big part of the basic income movement that talks about a carbon dividend as a way to give people their rightful ownership over the land, and so corporations might have to pay some kind of carbon tax that would then get paid out to individuals for using resources that we all together own, because we are all together citizens of the earth, and no one necessarily deserves to own the resources any more than anyone else. So I think there is a big part of the basic income movement that's already talking about sustainability and that's intertwined with it.
Let me share a little bit about my background that sort of fits into this. My background is economics and political science. When I first came across this concept of universal income, my very first reaction, without even thinking twice, was the idea is, well, it's communism. Everybody gets the same amount, at the beginning of the year. That was my first reaction. But then I sat and started to think about it more in depth, and I thought to myself, from a different perspective, what is the greatest challenge that all of us have on this planet? And that seems to me, from my background, my opinion, is revolution. And the idea where people turn on each other. And it seems to me that you're sort of proposing a solution so that that doesn't happen. That we don't have to go into battle over the basic resources, water, food, air, clean air, etc. It seems to me that what I like about this whole concept is the idea that everyone has that base platform. They can't go underneath it. And more importantly, in my perspective, is the idea of what Henry Ford said in 1920s. If a lot of people are unemployed and they don't have money, who's going to buy the stuff? They got nothing to buy with. And then what are people going to get that income? And I think you guys are addressing that. Would anybody like to take on that issue?
Well, that's why some CEOs that go around have been talking about it. There have been a couple, or no, more than a couple CEOs, big ones like Deutschland Telekom, I think, that came forth and defended basic income. Well, out of the blue. I have some doubts that he believes like us in basic income, but still, he does that, I think, because he feels they are running out of clients, or they will in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So we need the clients or the population potential clients to get enough money to buy this. In this case, communications. But it's extendable to other sectors. Of course, if people cannot buy these things, there's no motive to produce them, and so the corporations who are making them cannot profit from them. But still, that may not tell the whole story, because they are still controlling the means of production, and that brings us to communism, which I don't think this conversation is about communism in the traditional sense.
No.
Because this is not a political overcome revolution. Like basic income is going to conquer capitalism.
No.
I think.
Yeah,
I think, if anything, it's probably the next phase of capitalism. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, yeah, and I just wanted to say a few things on this topic of how basic income kind of works with capitalism. The Belgian philosopher Philippe Van Parijs claims that basic income can justify capitalism. It's the one way to make sure that everyone that is losing out in capitalism, if they're losing jobs, if they're falling through the cracks, this is a way to ensure that it's okay to have capitalism because everyone has at least a bottom level within it. Now, on top of that, when you're looking at a basic income and you're looking at capitalism, I think one of the best things about basic income is it really promotes risk-taking and it promotes entrepreneurialism. In the Namibian pilot project, they saw income generated by self-employment raised by 300%. You have all these people now, when they get this one amount every month, they know, okay, I can sock away this much in savings, I can buy my kids shoes for school, I can go to the doctor if I need, and yet they also have the capital to get together and start their own business. I think it was in the Indian pilot project where they had a village that had a pond that had had no fish in it for decades. And yet they had 24, maybe 30 people come together, pool 1 month's worth of their basic income, and they bought fish to restock the pond, and now that town has a thriving fishing economy. It's just trusting individuals to know what's best for themselves, know what's best for their town, and to know what niches in their area they can exploit to, start their own business and to earn money on the side to improve their standard of living even further than the
Wonderful.
I agree, and I think one other way that basic income sort of works hand in hand with capitalism is that when you provide money to people who are in low income brackets, they spend it because they need to. And so we see people spending in their local communities, and like Josh gave examples of investing in their own futures and furthering the economy that way, but we also see people spending that money quite immediately and quite locally because they're the ones who need the cash. When you give money to rich people, they save it, and we don't see that local economy.
But just a clarification that in most models of basic income, the rich don't get the basic income. They finance the basic income. This would be a redistribution policy for financing basic income. You before tax, you tell everyone will receive this amount, and after tax, the rich will get less than the basic income, which means they will finance all the others who need to get to the minimum level. So that's redistribution. That reduces inequality, and so that means that, well, it's not everybody getting the basic income. That happens on principle. But when you do the math, applying tax, the rich are actually financing basic income. And I agree with that, because there's too much inequality. Wealth is completely wrong distributed. And so I think that would be the right way to implement a basic income in a society that's extremely unequal.
Yeah, Andre, you're definitely right. It is a redistributive policy, and we haven't really talked about how to fund a basic income yet, and that's, I mean, if you're new to the idea, I'm sure you've been thinking in your mind this whole time, how do you afford to pay everyone this basic income? But to push that even further down the line, and to talk about the wealthy receiving basic income, I think it's very important that they do receive it, even if they are net funders for the basic income. I think if you have a universal policy and literally everyone receives this from the government, which is a bank transfer or something, I think that holds a lot of value, because all of a sudden wealthy people aren't going to be as willing to gut this program, because even though they're net, they're paying more than they're getting, they are still receiving something. It's kind of like the NHS in England or other great universal services. Wealthy people will end up paying for most of it, but they won't be as willing to cut it because they're still using it, if that makes sense.
Okay, we're getting close. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I want to throw out there that perhaps it need not be funded by individuals, and I very much believe in redistributive taxation, and I think that that's a good thing, but I think we also let our corporations get away with quite a bit, and I think that's a whole other discussion, but I think that it should probably be taxed back from wealthy individuals, but there's some room for corporate taxation and some other redistribution of national budgets to find ways to fund a basic income, and it pays for itself later. Wealthy people already pay for, the healthcare systems and the social safety nets in our country that pick people up when they're downstream, suffering the consequences of not having enough income, and this is a way to promote people's health and actually lessen the burden on the system more upstream.
One thing, we ran out of time in the show, and we're just barely touching the tip of the iceberg.
This is just starting.
This is just starting. We're going to have to go to phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. But I am going to leave our viewers with one idea. And this is the part that's really surprising to me. This is not a policy of government. This is actually being put forth by the Silicon Valley people. They're the ones that are saying that we've got to look at this idea more closely. It isn't like, let's change the government, let's new policy, legislation. It's not that. The people that are putting people out of work are the ones that are saying, we're going to put you out of work, but look, we've got a sort of a safety net we need to discuss, whether it be your wonderful idea or another one, but people are going to be unemployed on a large scale. With that, I'd like to give each one of you a couple of minutes to make closing statements. And again, we're just beginning to talk the topic. But again, ladies first. Jenna.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, I thank all of your listeners very much for listening and for coming on this journey with us. And I always like to leave people with, more questions than answers. I think that this is a difficult thing to tackle, and I think that democracy is best done in dialogue. So I would encourage all of your listeners to wrestle with it a little bit, to ask questions, to read articles, to talk about it over coffee with your friends. And I mean, I think we all need to work on this and to come up with a policy that's going to work in each of our political contexts effectively. So, and question your local authorities too, and get the ball rolling on the discussion, because we have a lot of work to do in figuring out together how to make this happen.
Excellent. Josh?
Yeah, again, thanks for having us on, and thank you to all the listeners and viewers who are listening or watching this later on. One kind of last area that we didn't really get to talk about much was the political acceptability of basic income. This is one of my favorite areas, because this is a policy that is inherently kind of socialist, but also libertarian. You have economists like Milton Friedman and F.A. Hayek supporting this, as well as people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Thomas Paine. You've got people all across the ideological spectrum who think this is a good idea. Now, if that, I mean, that screams bipartisanship to me. I really hope that at some point this becomes law somewhere, because the whole world will be watching whoever takes that brave first step, because I really think this is the way forward. And for people who are wondering where the next kind of pilots are coming from, we're seeing a lot of good developments out of Finland, out of Ontario, out of the Netherlands. New Zealand might be looking at it. And like you said with the Silicon Valley people, Y Combinator has decided to fund a basic income project in America as well. And so once we get more data from these pilots, once we see how this works in a more, westernized country, I really think that some country's going to finally pull and go for this idea, maybe in the next 10, 15 years.
Thank you very much. Andre?
Well, thanks, Armando, for this great initiative, and maybe some other opportunities later if you can count on us, I think. I would just say a couple of things about the previous interventions. One of them is that corporations should pay blah, blah, blah. Actually, one of my colleagues explained to me that all these corporation profits and land incomes from wealthy corporations, they actually end up as income. He does fiscal work for the government, so all that income. I also thought like you, but he explained to us that all of this wealth ends up as income. So if you tax income, you will include all these other forms of wealth in the taxation for financing basic income. So targeting income of individuals, because they eventually give bonuses to each other and the private jet and all that. That all comes from income. So if we tax income, then we should be okay financing the basic income. And another thing that we didn't say is the rich also benefit. The rich benefit from the basic income. How? Because health will be better overall, because education will be better overall in society. Safety, normally rich people worry very much about safety. They build walls and they put cameras. But safety is probably going to get better, because poor people will not be so poor. They will not have these basic needs unmet, so they will not be so unrest, social problems related to poverty, which are the majority. And so they will benefit from less social struggle. This is indirect benefits, but not less important, I think. And just to end up on that note, and thanks again for this wonderful conversation.
Well, I thank you, all three of you, for taking your time. And does somebody have contact information where our viewers can find more information and investigate more, please?
Jenna, you can give Armando our contacts? Yeah?
Yeah, well, all three of us are writers for Basic Income News. So I would first encourage your viewers to check out Basic Income News, and we have a website, it's basicincome.org, and so start there, and then if you go to the press room page, you can actually see contact information for each one of us individually and get in touch with us that way.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm gonna take Jenna's comment. Okay, where do we need to talk about next time?
Well, so I think it's interesting, and this has been like a beautiful thing for me. The last 3 interviews I've done, we haven't talked about work disincentive at all. Yeah. And it's wonderful that people are not obsessed with this issue that people are going to stop working if you give them money. And I like that, because I think we know that that's empirically not true, not the way that we think of it anyway. And so I think, for me, the next phase of the discussion needs to be around how do we reframe work, how do we create a society where volunteerism is rewarded, where we consider the work of raising our children to be important and valuable paid work. So I'd like to see more discussion around what does mechanization of labor look like, and how does the basic income actually support a society where work is a more inclusive concept.
Well, you have my full attention. I'm looking forward to doing that program next. But thank you very much for bringing all of us who are viewing this program with you. It will be on demand as well. And please, for those of you that are watching this program at any age, get involved with the topic. It's got a lot of unique ideas, but one that invites us to think, to see the world in a whole new way, because we are entering further into the 21st century. And it is a new world, and the old rules don't apply anymore. And I think that all three of you highlighted that. So again, Josh, Jenna, and Andre, thank you very much for being on the show. I look forward to having you back.
Okay.
Please,
Thanks.
let's continue the dialogue here and others as well. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been Armando F. Sanchez. You can contact me at lsacnational@hotmail.com, and please visit that site where you're going to learn more about this interesting information, and you will see about it more and more in media and in television. And one more time, please, Jenna, could you give us that link again?
Sure, yeah. So www.basicincome.org, and you'll find the BI News page. And we are all on the Press Root website.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, take them on their offer. These people are very genuine, very committed, very insightful, and I can't thank them for teaching me as much as they have, and we're just barely starting the ball rolling. Thank you very much. Adios, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Thanks.
Adios.